As regards the Stones, do you see the Stones going on indefinitely?
Yeah. I think we'll just slowly stop or grind to a halt, one of the two.
Did you have any particular thoughts on turning 60 on Saturday?
None.
Does it worry you at all to...
Not at all. I'm quite happy being 60 and I'll be quite happy 70.
Charlie Watts was the heartbeat of the Rolling Stones for nearly 6 decades, anchoring the band's sound with his steady and unshakable drumming. When he passed away on August 24, 2021, at age 80, fans and musicians worldwide mourned the loss of one of rock's most respected drummers. But the band was noticeably absent from the private ceremony held in Devon. Their absence sparked speculation, but the reasons behind the decision were tied to COVID-19 travel restrictions and their commitment to the upcoming No Filter tour. Today we're taking a closer look into the circumstances surrounding Watts' passing, the band's decision, and how they honored his legacy despite being unable to attend in person. Charlie Watts, a pillar of the Rolling Stones. Charlie Watts was never the loudest nor flashiest member of the Rolling Stones, but he was the backbone of their sound. Born June 2, 1941 in London, he grew up with a passion for jazz and an eye for design. Before becoming a musician, he trained as a graphic artist, a skill that later influenced his contributions to the band's stage sets and album artwork. Despite his quiet demeanor, Watts carried himself with an understated elegance, a stark contrast to the rock and roll excess that surrounded him. Watts joined the Rolling Stones in 1963, completing the lineup that soon took over the world. Unlike many drummers in rock music, he kept his playing tight and precise, avoiding unnecessary fills or theatrics. His approach to drumming was simple yet effective, driving the band's rhythm without ever overpowering the music. Keith Richards once said, quote, "Charlie's the engine. We don't go anywhere without the engine." Watts' ability to lock into a groove with bassist Bill Wyman made the Stones' sound both loose and powerful, setting them apart from bands of the time.
He had feel. He had intelligence. Rock and roll doesn't necessarily need the whole battery of drums, It's got to do with when to not hit.
It's the silence.
What do you got? If you're making music, silence is your canvas.
Away from the stage, Watts lived a private life, far removed from the excesses that defined the band's image. While Mick Jagger and Keith Richards embodied the rock and roll lifestyle, Watts remained grounded, famously loyal to his wife, Shirley Ann Shepherd, whom he married in 1964. He had little interest in fame, preferring to spend his free time on his country estate in Devon, collecting rare cars, despite not having a driver's license. His love for jazz never faded. Throughout his career with the Stones, he pursued side projects that allowed him to play the music that first inspired him. The Charlie Watts Quintet, formed in the 1990s, showcased his deep appreciation for swing and bebop, styles that had influenced his playing since childhood. Quote, "I wanted to be Max Roach," he once said, referencing the legendary jazz drummer. Even as one of the biggest rock stars on the planet, he never saw himself as a rock drummer.
Richards was not the only Stone who had a problem with drugs.
I had an awful dabble with them and got in terrible shape.
You say an awful dabble. What were you doing?
Amphetamine and heroin. Which is a bit contradictory in terms, but that's how I was living, and it's really bad for you.
Up and down.
Yeah.
For nearly 60 years, Watts provided the foundation for the Rolling Stones' music and an unshakable presence within the band. He rarely sought the spotlight, but his impact was undeniable. Mick Jagger summed it up saying, "Charlie was the heartbeat of the band, and he was also a great friend." The circumstances surrounding Watts' passing.
You lost your buddy.
Yeah.
And you lost a buddy who's around your age.
Yeah, exactly.
How was that for you?
Well, it's very difficult to lose friends, as you get older, you lose a lot of friends. And not only friends, it's very weird because they're not friends of yours necessarily, but they're people that have been in your life, whether they're musicians or, that you've admired, or actors, or wherever, whatever they are, but lots of people of your age group or generation, you might say, have all gone.
Charlie Watts had always been known for his quiet resilience, both in his personal life and within the Stones. That strength was evident when he was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2004. He underwent treatment and made a full recovery, later downplaying the severity of the illness. Quote, "I thought I was going to die," he admitted in a rare interview. "I had another operation to take the lymph nodes out and radiotherapy, which was 6 weeks long. It knocks you out." Despite the challenges, he returned to the stage, continuing to perform with the same steady precision that had defined his career. In 2021, health concerns surfaced again. Watts underwent a medical procedure that forced him to step away from the Stones' upcoming U.S. tour. The band announced that Steve Jordan, a longtime collaborator, would fill in for him. Watts, always the professional, supported the decision, stating, quote, "For once, my timing has been a little off." The announcement suggested that he would recover, and many expected him to return when he was ready. On August 24, 2021, the news broke that Watts had died peacefully in a London hospital at age 80. His publicist released a brief statement describing him as a cherished husband, father, and grandfather, end quote, "one of the greatest drummers of his generation." His passing came as a shock to fans and the music industry. The Rolling Stones, who had been rehearsing in Boston for their tour, were devastated. Mick, Keith, and Ronnie Wood all shared personal tributes, with Richards posting an image of Watts' empty drum kit with a sign reading, "Closed." The music world responded with an outpouring of respect. Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, and Elton John all praised Watts' contributions to rock music. Dave Grohl called him the heartbeat of rock and roll. Even beyond the industry, his loss was deeply felt. Watts had never courted fame, but his influence was undeniable. The private funeral in Devon. Charlie Watts had always lived as a private person, and his funeral reflected that. Held in Devon, where he lived for many years, the ceremony was small and attended only by close family and friends. Unlike the large public memorials that often follow the passing of legendary musicians, Watts' farewell was quiet, dignified, and far removed from the chaos of the rock and roll world. Those who knew him best believed this is exactly how he would have wanted it. The Rolling Stones were not in attendance, a fact that raised questions among fans. Given the deep bond between Watts and his bandmates, many expected to see Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ronnie Wood at the service. But travel restrictions and COVID-19 protocols made it nearly impossible for them to be there. At the time, the band was in Boston preparing for their upcoming No Filter tour. Returning to the UK would have required them to quarantine upon arrival, making it difficult to pay their respects in person without jeopardizing their ability to continue with the tour. Sam Cutler, the band's former road manager, later spoke about the ceremony and how it reflected Watts' reserved nature. Quote, "Charlie always kept his private life just that, private," Cutler said. His funeral was exactly what he would have wanted. Low-key, no fuss, just family. Those closest to Watts knew that he had never sought out the limelight. He was a musician first and a celebrity only by association. Despite the band's absence, their grief was evident. In the days following his passing, Jagger, Richards, and Wood each shared personal messages honoring Watts. Jagger posted a photo of a smiling Watts behind his drum kit, while Richards simply shared an image of his drum set with that sign reading "Closed." Their tributes made it clear that, though they couldn't be there in person, their hearts were in Devon that day. The Rolling Stones' commitments in the U.S. In the weeks leading up to Charlie's passing, the Stones were deep into the preparations to continue their No Filter tour. Originally scheduled for 2020, the tour had been postponed due to the pandemic. When live music finally began returning, the band made the difficult decision to resume performing, even though their longtime drummer would not be joining them. Watts had already announced he'd be sitting out due to his medical procedure, and Steve Jordan had been selected to take his place. Rehearsals were already underway in Boston when news of Watts' death broke. The timing put the band in an incredibly difficult position. Canceling or delaying the tour would have meant rescheduling dozens of shows, potentially affecting thousands of fans, crew members, and venue staff. At the same time, Watts had been a constant presence in the band for nearly 60 years, and losing him just before going back on the road was a devastating blow. Keith Richards later shared how much Watts had encouraged them to keep going. Quote, "Charlie told me, look, I can't do it, but the show must go on, and he would have hated it if we stopped because of him." The decision to carry on with the tour was also a way for the band to honor Watts the way they knew best, through music. Every night of the tour, they paid tribute to him in their performances, making it clear while he was no longer behind the drums, he remained at the heart of the Rolling Stones. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite memory of Charlie? Let us know in the comment section below.